If you've never heard, "That's more than I thought it was going to be," this video is not for you. When you do home improvement sales or anything else that requires a one-call close, there's a lot of subtleties and nuances that make the difference between you making money versus making a lot of money. This is an art and requires a higher skill set than if you're just an order taker where you leave estimates and follow up on the customer. I'm talking about doing it with integrity in a way where after you make the sale, the customer says, "What I liked about you is that you didn't try and pressure me. Thanks." To me, closing is not about talking, but about asking questions. The reason you have to ask questions is to be able to deep dive what a customer is really saying so you can help solve their problem. If you do your sales call right, the problem you're solving is helping the customer get what they want. That's what closing is in its purest sense, helping the customer get something they want. Now, for that to happen, you have to have done a good sales presentation which makes them want it and when they can see the value of what you're selling. If you haven't done that, then the close won't work and you shouldn't be trying to close them anyway. Otherwise, you're just another high-pressure, clueless salesperson. In this video, we're going to cover something that I know you've heard and different ways to handle it and what it really means. At the end, I'll tell you the biggest mistake salespeople do regarding this statement, so please watch. If you find these videos helpful, help me by subscribing, or if you want to know more about closing, check out the link to the free closing training listed in the description below. One thing that happens in the close is that you often hear, "That's half of what I thought it was going to be," or "I didn't think it was going to be this much money." Your understanding of this and how you handle it could mean the difference between you making a sale or leaving empty-handed. It could mean two entirely different things. One could be a reaction and the other could be an objection. The difference is whether their idea of what they thought the price was going to be or if they thought it was going to be half the amount. It depends if this statement was based on what they thought before you got there or after you completed your sales presentation. What they thought about the price before you got there is not as important as what they think about the price after you show them the value of what you're selling. Think about that. I know if you're selling home improvements, you've heard someone say, "Wow, that's more than I thought it was going to be," or "You're twice as much as I thought it was going to be." If what they mean was that's what they were thinking the price was going to be before you got there, then it doesn't mean that they don't want to do it or don't think what you're charging isn't fair. It's just a knee-jerk reaction. We've all bought things that before we saw the price or went to the store, we thought it was going to be less, but once we realized what it actually cost, still wanted it and we bought it. I can't tell you how many times I'm handing someone a credit card while I'm saying, "That's almost twice what I thought it was going to be." The point is that if that's the situation when they're saying that and you don't understand, you might start trying to turn an objection that isn't even there. What you're hearing is a reaction, not an objection. Think about what would happen if I was handing someone my credit card while saying, "I didn't know it was going to be this much, or I actually thought it would be half this amount." Instead of just taking the credit card, the salesperson started arguing or trying to turn me right there. I'd probably take my credit card back and the sale would be lost. The easiest way to determine whether a "that's more than I thought it was going to be" is an objection or reaction. In other words, did they mean that's what they thought it was going to be before I got there, or more than they thought it was after I went through the sales presentation, is to ask them. "If you don't mind, you said it was more than you thought it was going to be." "Yes." "Well, what were you thinking it was going to be about?" "Oh, Ron, I thought it was going to be about 10,000. "And is that what you thought the price was going to be before I got here or after I showed you everything?" "Oh, well, that was before you got here." A lot of times I handle it by almost brushing it off by saying, "Well, that makes sense because until I got here, there's no way that you knew you were going to see a bathroom this nice." I almost just acknowledge the reaction, but don't really spend any time dealing with it. The other situation regarding where they say, "I thought it was going to be less or half that amount," is when they say that in reference to after you went through your whole sales presentation. I know this because remember when someone says this, I clarify again by saying, "When you say you thought it was going to be less, do you mean before I got here or after I showed you everything?" If they say after you showed me everything, this means you haven't built the value and properly price conditioned them in your sales presentation. You're losing them in the sales call, not the close. That's what you need to work on in the future. You can build the value in the close, but now you're on the defensive, and it's always easier to build the value before you show them the price, not after. If they say that it's more than they thought after you explain everything, there are a couple ways I handle it. One way that has helped me figure out what's going on is to ask them, "If you don't mind me asking, what makes you say that?" Once in a while, they actually diffuse that themselves by saying, "Oh, I don't know, I guess I was just guessing or hoping." then in that case you can see it's almost more of a reaction than a real objection. I handle that by almost joking. Well, isn't that the way everything is today? If they say there's another reason that they think your price is double what they thought, then you know what you have to deal with. Or sometimes if they say, well, I thought it was going to be $9,000 and you're at $12,000, I say, well, why so high? I've seen it at $5,000. Then when they look confused, I say, sure, I've seen people selling stuff for half of what we charge. It's not the same thing, of course. There's nothing someone can make that someone else can sell for less using cheaper materials and labor. Is that what you want? Well, no. Well, this is what it cost. One additional thing on this subject. A lot of times in the close you hear a customer say some objection about the money. That's too much money. I don't know if I can afford it. The worst thing I've seen salespeople do right here is that they start by asking the question, well, what did you think it was going to be? Think about it. There's no benefit to asking that question because then they usually go back to telling you what they thought it was going to be before you got there. Well, before you got here, I thought it was going to be half. What difference does it make what they thought the price was going to be before you got there? It's almost like saying they guessed wrong. At this point, it just confuses the whole issue and muddies up the close. Again, what's important is not what they think the price is going to be before you get there, but what they think the price will be after you show them the value of your product. The right direction when they give you a money objection is to isolate the objection. So other than the money, is this what you want? Yes. Then figure out whether the money means that they can't afford it or don't think it's worth it. So when you say it's the money, do you mean you're not sure if you can afford it or not sure if it's worth it? Remember, if you price condition them right, it should always just be that they can't afford it, not that it's not worth it. Then get the gap. When you say you can't afford it, how much too much is the monthly payment? Then close the gap. That's the process you need to follow. If you want to know more about this topic, check out the video on closing training, how and why to bring it to the money, or the playlist on home improvement closing training listed above. Happy selling!